Well, welcome to a review on the brand new 2019 Mazda 6. But before we start anything, I want to take a moment to thank Capital Mazda of Cary for letting me do another review on their cars. I already did a review on the CX-5 and the new Mazda 3, so if you want to check that out, I will link that up top. And I'll of course leave the dealership information down in the description box below. You can ask for Will Rodden. He's the sales specialist who is helping me out here. With that out of the way, there's a lot to talk about with the new Mazda 6, but we got to start somewhere, and that will be the exterior. My gosh, what a gorgeous car. Will you just look at it? It is such an amazing design. I love it. I mean, this red paint job is absolutely gorgeous. It is liquid-like in the way that it looks. Liquid red crystal soul. I don't know what it's called, but it's absolutely Mazda's best paint job. The only way I would ever get a Mazda, to be honest. You know, the front end, it is so aggressive. The rear is the only part that's a bit subdued, but it has that classic sedan proportion to it, so I'm kind of cool with it. But the car that I'm sitting in right now, it is a 2019 Mazda 6, and it's the Grand Touring model. So it's not the fully loaded Signature, but I'm kind of glad it's not, because primarily it's got what I was looking for, and that was the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder turbo. That's the golden ticket. That's what I was looking for with this car. The turbo in this thing, stupendous. I've been driving around for a little bit. What a great transmission and engine combo. I love it. You know, Mazda, much like the Korean cars, they're one to listen to their consumers and give them what they want. Well, they certainly did, because the previous, like the 2014 Mazda 6s, stuff like that, people love the way they drove, love the way it looked. Classic, great things that Mazda always gets done right, but everybody was asking for, they want a bit more pep, a little bit more power, of course. And it would have been nice if they gave us a V6, but instead they gave us a Turbo 4, and this turbo is absolutely amazing, as I'm going to demonstrate here. If I put my foot down, I love the way this thing is tuned. They did a lot of work tuning this thing, and to be honest, what they did was primarily they dialed it down. That's really what they did, because this is a ton of power, 250 horsepower to 310 pounds-feet of torque. It's a healthy amount, that's for sure. I really want to test this car out because I know it's front-wheel drive only. In the CX-5, I reviewed the regular 2.5 liter Skyactiv without the turbos, and that felt fine, but I was a bit concerned when they only offered the turbo motor in all-wheel drive only. I assumed that the Mazda 6 was going to be an absolute burnout fest. It's not. It kind of is, but it's totally not. It's really fun, actually. They tuned it so well to give you power when you want it. And when you launch it from a start, it's dialed back a bit, the power, so it doesn't do 0 to 60 as fast as like a Camry or a Honda Accord, but what it does is it puts the power down well, and it gives you a great sensation of speed. That's what this motor does, and it's one that I highly advocate. It actually even sounds pretty good, reacts extremely well. I made it to the 6-speed automatic, which I'll talk about in a bit, but yeah, it also mitigates turbo lag really, really well, almost BMW-like, if I'm honest with you. And that's high praise, because I think BMW is one of the best when it comes to engine and trans performance and mitigating that turbo lag. I think they do it extremely well, and so does Mazda. There's no real lag. It feels like a V6, and I know that's the 4-cylinder turbo's job, is to basically replace a V6, but it does it really well. And honestly, this is how I would get the Mazda 6. Yes, I really like the 186 horsepower in the regular non-turbo engine, but this is just so good, and it finally gives you that surge you're looking for when you're already moving and you want to pass someone like on a highway or something. This now has the horsepower and torque to do that seamlessly and to feel like a luxury car. And luxury car is really the best way to describe this thing. Because I want to talk about the 2018 Mazda 6 for a little bit. There's not a huge difference between that and the 2019, but in 2018, there was a massive change between that and the 2017. Like I said before, Mazda likes to listen to their customers. They did that here. A lot of people said that previous Mazdas were really noisy and things like that, so what they did was they went ballistic. This is not a fully redesigned model, but what they did was they quieted this car down so much. NVH this turbo engine, they spent a lot of time tuning these two things. The suspension components, the tires, all that have been heavily changed. The tires, they went to like this Falcon all-season tire to reduce road noise and tire noise there. So they did that first, and then the bushings with the suspension, the dampers, the coils, legitimately so many things were changed on this car. And they even put acoustic glass in here. They even cut pieces of the windshield and like the pillars down to reduce noise even further. They did so much. I mean, it feels like they did as much work as they would in like a fully redesigned model. And that's really what I respect about Mazda. I mean, they care enough. I mean, they don't sell 1 million units a year, but they care enough to consistently improve and change their models. And, you know, it's all worked. You know, this engine, this trans, that performs so well, and it is really rather quiet in here. And of course, this interior, I mean, what you're getting here is basically an Audi A6 for half the price. That's what a Mazda 6 is basically. And that's big praise, honestly. Now, talking about this transmission a little bit, I already said in the CX-5 review that I absolutely love it. It's a 6-speed, no weirdness, no nonsense, no gear hunting. That's what I love. And that's kind of the problem, is that the ridiculous 10 speeds, the 14, 15 speeds that you want, that's the problem that those engines have. I mean, I drove like a Ford Raptor recently. That thing was always jumping between the gears, just so unnecessary, and it's not even helping with fuel efficiency either. This gets really reasonable fuel efficiency, at least on paper. As long as you're not, you know, always stomping on this thing, it'll treat you well. And it just has a seamless action to it. This transmission feels absolutely fantastic. Do not change this, love it. And you know, I was saying that this has that luxury car feel to it. Only thing is, you know, Mazda is still known for being a fun to drive car. You know, they obviously, the driver is at the center point here when it comes to Mazda, and you know, it has to drive well, it has to be fun to drive, and that it really is. It, you know, the ride isn't quite as supple as it would be in like a Camry or something, but to argue about it is just absolutely stupid. I mean, it rides really well. I said this in the CX-5 as well. I mean, yeah, there are other crossovers that'll ride marginally better, but it's really not worth mentioning because the drivability that you gain is just so much better. The car feels great, and it strikes a great seating position, which I absolutely love. That's something that I've said in the Mazda 3 review as well. The seating position is so important, and Mazda always strikes that out of the park, because that alone gives you so much confidence driving the car. You know, no matter anything else, if you have a great seating position in the car, if it doesn't feel weird, you will really feel one with the car, as stupid as that sounds, but that's the best way I can put it. Oh man, love flooring this thing. It always has wheel spin, you know, always trips its tires, but I love it. It is so much fun to floor this thing. Love that. If I haven't mentioned this already, it's 250 horsepower to 310 foot-pounds of torque. If you put regular in it, the horsepower does drop to 227 horsepower, so something to keep in mind. Put premium in it. It is a turbo motor, high output. Put the turbo in it, it'll help with the longevity. But also the brakes feel great, natural. You know, steering, brakes, natural. I always say that about Mazdas when I get inside of them. But I will say that the steering does feel a bit lighter in this car, but nothing that deters it from the excellent driving dynamics of this car. So I love that it's easy to handle within town, you know, parking lots, things like that. It's just tuned really well for street driving, and I think people who get in it and drive it, they'll really be able to appreciate it. But I think once again, you know, Mazda did a fantastic job with this car. My main concern was, I knew it was going to drive great. I was just concerned if it was going to have a ton of understeer. I mean, it has a little bit. I mean, that's just characteristic of a front-wheel drive car. But nobody's really going to drive this thing like an animal anyway. And I was just worried about the wheel spin off the line. It's there, but it's like it's there in like a fun way. You know what I mean? Like, it feels great, and it's really rather well controlled. I mean, the Camrys that I've been in, like V6 Camrys, they absolutely love to shred their tires. This one doesn't shred it. This is definitely a lot more, you can tell that they spent a lot of time tuning this really well for the street, so that's great. NVH, all the stuff that they did to lower the road noise, it's worked really well. This is definitely one of the quieter cars in the segment. Trans performance, like I said, perfect. Cabin has a great feel. There's no real distractions in this car. I'll mention that as a final thing. It does have a few safety features like radar cruise control, blind spot monitoring, and lane keep assist, But none of these things are really super intrusive, honestly, and they work pretty well. But it's good to see those things in a non-fully loaded package. That's why I said that the Grand Touring is an excellent trim level to go with, and I'll talk more about that in the interior segment. But yeah, overall, this is a superb vehicle, like I mentioned. Only con really is it's not as perfect riding as the Camrys and stuff are, but like I said before, it's stupid to complain about that. The seats are really comfortable, so that helps with it, and the drivability that you get over something like a Camry is just far superior. So they've struck a great balance here on what to look for a relatively fun family sedan, road car, all that stuff. So I'm a big fan of this car. Like I said, the 186 horsepower, 2.5 liter, that's also a great motor. You know, if you don't want to pay up more money for this car, that's really not a bad option either, if I'm going to be completely honest. And you can even get a stick with that as well. So it's great to see them holding on to that and offering that to the more enthusiast buyer. So you really can't go wrong with any spec Mazda. They all feel great. And yeah, that pretty much sums up my driving segment. Let's go ahead and take a look at that interior, because I'm sure you'll enjoy that. Yes, one of my most favorite parts of the Mazda reviews, the interior segment. Now, one thing to note about this particular Mazda 6 is that it's not actually even fully loaded. It's not the signature version, it's the Grand Touring. But even in this Grand Touring model, it retains such an excellent interior, just like it is in all of the Mazdas. The attention to detail is absolutely excellent. There's a high level use of leathers, whether it's genuine or not. I mean, it smells like it honestly in here, but whether it is or not, lots of stitched leathers, woods, metal pieces are being used. Very little amounts of actual hard plastics used. I mean, even down here, it's not insanely hard plastics. I mean, I usually don't care about things like that, but it's just, that's how far Mazda has gone with the interiors. I mean, that level of attention to detail, whether you care about it or not, it is there. But first I want to talk about these seats. Absolutely incredibly comfortable. They feel like a luxury car seat. They actually feel very similar to my Genesis G80 seats, so that says a lot. It is extremely well cushioned. The bolsters are very appropriate for this type of car, and it is a 6-way electric adjustable seat in the front. There is no memory seats. The passenger seat, because this is the Grand Touring, is actually a manual adjusted seat. But really, honestly, this car, this spec is the one I would go for. The price is excellent, and it gives you everything that you could want in a car, and no real extra nonsense, to be honest. So I think this Grand Touring spec strikes a great balance. The steering wheel, the size of it is really nice, and it is a leather wrapped steering wheel. It just feels absolutely excellent in the hand. It does have these sort of plastic like shift paddles, which is fine. I had something similar to this in the Acura TSX. Very nice, they work well. The buttons, I'm starting to get a little bit more used to it as, you know, I'm doing more of these reviews, but it's really not too bad, but it might require a bit of a learning curve, but it's really not too bad, because the rest of the technology, actually, sorry, before we go on to the rest of the technology, I just want to mention that there is no electronic speedometer in this vehicle. It is actually a physical speedometer and tachometer. There's just one digital circle shape gauge on the right that shows you your fuel gauges and things of that nature, as well as some of your safety features, if they're on or not, or if a door is open, or, you know, things of that nature. But that's really good. The rest of the technology, though, extremely easy to use. One of my most favorite infotainment systems to use in general, next to the Hyundai Kia products. I love the scroll wheel, again, like in all Mazdas. Great tactile feel for all the physical buttons, and there is a ton of physical buttons in here, and knobs, volume knob. It's just really easy to use. Nobody had to explain to me how to use this stuff, similar to the Korean cars. I was just able to jump in, and it felt natural to me. It felt easy to use, and I can see this not being too terribly distracting while you're driving. Now, this particular model does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's nice. And like with all Mazda screens, even though this is the older infotainment setup, it does retain a great quality screen to it. It does look great. Backup camera, all that stuff, it looks really nice. Fit and finish, quality to the touch and feel and how it looks, absolutely hit it out of the park. Love that. I just want to take your attention to the door panel. I like the little shapes, the creases. Again, the material choices are fantastic with the woods, the metals. Nice little switches for your windows, and a little knob to control your mirrors. That's excellent. The door pocket space is an excellent size, conveniently holds my large water bottle, and this car is loaded with the Bose audio system, so that's why I said that this model is an excellent trim choice to have because the Bose audio sounds excellent. It's a really crisp and clear audio system. It doesn't have a heavy amount of bass, but that really doesn't matter because otherwise it sounds really nice and clear, so I do like that. But if you are looking for a bit more bass, this might not be it, but I think this strikes a great balance. And this interior overall, aside from the luxury car feel, I mean, aside from it basically being like a half-price Audi A6, aside from that, there's this great airy feel inside of the cabin. It feels very spacious in here. The storage spaces themselves seem very useful and practical, so just a really nice place to spend time in, a really comfortable space to spend time in. Now let's hop inside of those back seats and take a look at how the space is really like in the rear. Okay, climbing inside of the rear now. This is usually the part of the review where you guys usually have a complaint with Mazda. That's the space, the rear legroom, stuff like that. I can tell you that this seat is set to my setting at 5'11", and I fit back here no problem. I have no issues getting in. Legroom, not a problem. Lots of foot room as well, so it tucks in nicely underneath the seat. Camry or an Accord might have like an inch or two more of space. I mean, it's really not a make it or break it deal for me, honestly, in the sedan segment. This is more than adequate, honestly, for most people. And I do have this seat set all the way down for filming purposes, but the actual seats, they have a nice like dip in them, so you're kind of snug and fit inside of this interior, and it's really a great feel sitting back here. And it's also very well cushioned, just like it is in the front seats. And you do have the classic, you know, armrest that folds down with two cup holders, and you can flip this thing up to maybe put like a phone in it or something. But regardless, really comfortable space. There's actually not a pass-through in this vehicle. The only way to actually get access to the trunk is to like fold down one of the seats, but not a big issue to me. And you do get ventilation in the back, which is always great to see, especially in this class. Bose speakers, quality of the door panel still retains. Honestly, guys, I think you know this by now, really the only complaint I have with Mazda interiors is basically the piano gloss black plastic that they use near the gear shifter and, you know, sometimes around the window switches. But other than that, their material choices, their quality, their comfort, it's all on a high level. And, you know, in cars like this Mazda 6, I mean, I have no issues with space, and even the trunk is pretty spacious. So let's take a look at that. All right, now moving towards the rear, we're at the trunk area. What I do like about this is actually it's not electronically controlled. You can open it, you can unlatch it with the key fob, but it won't automatically open for you. So it doesn't take like 10 seconds for it to open up. You can actually just close it yourself, no problems. Now this is a very typical sedan trunk space, nothing wrong with it, very normal. It's actually a pretty sizable one in my personal opinion. It's not, I guess the only thing I can mention is that it's not super high, but it's, come on, it's totally fine. And this is actually where you pull down the seats. You pull them down here, and then you can just push them down. Very easy. But if you've ever owned or been in a sedan, it's typical, exactly what you would expect. Nothing really too crazy going on here. Main thing that I love is that it's not electronically controlled. And if you do lift up this carpet, you do get a spare in here, so that's nice. And a couple of trays to put a few things in there as well. So a very fine trunk area. How's it going, guys? I pretty much finished editing the Mazda 6 review, but I forgot to film the conclusions or the wrapping up segment, so I'm just going to do that here. After driving the Mazda 6 for a little bit, I was thoroughly impressed with this car, and I knew I would be. You know, you already know I'm a huge fan of Mazda. I mean, they're pretty much segment leaders, to be honest, you know what I mean? And this Mazda 6 is really no exception. And as you saw in the video, I mean, the only two cons that I had with this car was the piano gloss black plastic that they use inside of the interior for the gear lever and for the window switch area, but that's about it. And also I said that the ride comfort wasn't exactly perfect, but that is the dumbest thing ever. I mean, I really had to reach into my rectum to find that one little con that I found with this car. And like I said in the video, you know, Mazda had to find that right balance between ride quality and fun to drive. And you know, the car that I had was the Grand Touring. It was a higher option one, not the fully loaded, but it did come with like 19-inch rims and all that. You know, you can go for a more basic model, you know, with a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated motor with a stick or something like that. It'll have much smaller wheels on it and it'll ride so much better. So that's something to keep in mind. And like I said before, I love that motor, the naturally aspirated, and couple that with a solid 6-speed manual. It'll be an amazing driving experience. But if ride quality is really of your concern, you know, I drove the CX-5. That one did ride a little bit better. You know, it's an SUV. It's sitting up a little bit higher. So, you know, it does have a slightly better ride quality to it. So if that matters, there you go. But I would never want to sacrifice the solid drivability that this car has. It has such a high quality driving experience. I would never sacrifice that for the world. So I would rather ride like a tad harsher than like a Camry for it to feel the way it does. And that's what Mazda has absolutely knocked out of the park with this Mazda 6. I mean, what they've done is they made the mid-sized car segment, as boring as it is, they finally made it feel special with that interior, with the way it drives. It drives like a luxury German car. That's really honestly what it feels like. It feels like you're driving an Audi. That is high praise. I cannot say that about any other mid-sized car, especially from Japan. I mean, they all have that kind of boring driving demeanor to it. You know what I mean? This one has that solid, fun to drive feel that no other mid-sized car has, and that's what really puts Mazda ahead of the pack here. I mean, and the best part is it doesn't really cost an arm and a leg. I mean, this turbo Mazda 6, I mean, if you're looking at a Mazda 3 that's fully loaded and you're looking at an automatic one, this one doesn't cost that much more, and it's a much larger car, and it still drives amazing. And I love the power out of this turbo 4-cylinder. I was so amazed with this turbo 4 coupled with that 6-speed automatic. What an incredible combination. And I really just I was really curious about this car because I love the looks, I love the price. I just want to see if it would be an absolute disaster, you know, having all that power to the front wheels. I'm glad to report that it's not. It drove amazing. I really had an amazing time with this car. So once again, I just want to thank Capital Mazda of Cary and Will Rodden for letting me do these reviews. Really appreciate those guys over there. They're really supportive of what I do. So I'm definitely going to leave their information down in the description box below. If you guys are interested in a Mazda, you know, give them a call. You know, they can ship cars to you and stuff like that. And they're just really great people to work with. So I really appreciate them, and I really appreciate you guys for watching this video. Thank you so much. Take care. Goodbye.